Most of us grow gardens to feed our families and to preserve food for later. But what if you had to rely on your garden to sustain you, not just supplement meals? Would you be growing the same things? When calories matter, storage matters, and space is limited, not all crops are equal. When I look at crops that actually sustain us, I look at a few very specific things: how many calories they produce, how much space they take up, how reliable that crop is, and how well they store to feed us long after the garden is gone. There are a few crops that I grow no matter what, and potatoes are the top of my list. Potatoes give you more calories per square foot than almost anything that you can grow, and they're generally a reliable crop. Potatoes store very well. They don't need perfect weather to grow. They are incredibly versatile and go with almost every meal. Potatoes are not flashy, but they are dependable, and that's exactly what you want when you're feeding your family. Not all potatoes store the same, so variety choice matters. You want to store long keepers. That's where russet potatoes will last long into the winter months. These type of potatoes are very high in calories. They have a thick skin, and this makes them excellent for storage. Yukon Golds have a slightly shorter storage than russets, but they have an excellent flavor and versatility. Kennebec potatoes are a high-yielding potato. They have good disease resistance, and they're also good keepers. If you have a hard time growing russet potatoes like we do in your climate, then I suggest you try the Kennebec potato. Potatoes give you one of the best returns for the space that they take up. You can generally expect for every 1 pound of seed potatoes to give you back 8 to 10 pounds of harvest for the average home garden. You can also densely plant your potatoes, giving you more food in a smaller amount of space. That kind of return you just can't beat in a small garden. They're also very adaptable to what you have. You can grow them in ground, in raised beds, in large containers, or even grow bags. So almost anybody can grow potatoes. The great thing about growing potatoes, once you've harvested that early season or that mid-season crop, you can plant other crops like fall potatoes or dry beans or even some greens that'll go into the winter months. This allows you to double use that space, which is excellent for small acreage. Potatoes store for months in a cool, dark place without any electricity. That alone makes them one of the most valuable crops that you can grow. If your garden had one job to feed you, potatoes would be the top of the list. Corn is one of those crops that people assume that it's not worth growing unless they have acres, and that's not entirely true. The key is growing the right type of corn the right way. Corn does take up space, and this matters on small homesteads and small gardens. It isn't a crop that you can squeeze in on the edges of garden beds or a couple of skinny rows on the fence line and hope for the best. Corn is wind pollinated, so it does best when it's planted in blocks. When it's planted in long, skinny rows, the wind will blow that pollen away, and you end up with poorly pollinated ears. And that's just wasted space. In an 8 by 8 foot block, you can fit in 60 plants. Dent and flower corn generally give you one good ear at least per stalk. That translates into 15 to 25 pounds of good dry corn. That's real food with dozens of meals and shelf-stable calories that you can store. When we're talking about feeding yourself long-term, sweet corn isn't the best option. It is a treat, but not a staple. Sweet corn has a short window of harvest, and it doesn't store well unless you're freezing or canning it. And it doesn't give you the same calorie return as the space that it uses up. And we are talking about calories that count in storage. If corn is going to earn its place, it needs to be the kind that can be dried, stored, and used in a variety of meals. Dent corn and flower corn dry easily, store for years, and can be easily turned into meal or flour. Let me give you an example. On average, sweet corn will give you about 400 calories per pound, whereas dent corn will give you 1,600 calories per pound. That's 4 times as much. So you can see why it's important to grow it if you can. The best type of corn for high calories and long storage is dent corn, flower corn, or flint corn. We love to grow the glass gem corn in our garden. This is the kind of corn that people relied on for generations. Corn isn't the highest yield crop per square foot. That's where potatoes win. But it does give you something different. It gives you a grain crop. When you're adding corn to your pantry, you're not just adding squash or roots. You're adding a staple that you can turn into breads, tortillas, porridges, and dumplings, and that helps break up meal boredom. Corn doesn't have to take up your main garden beds. You can transform an area that maybe you're going to be doing something in the future, like maybe a chicken run, or you can even use a section in your lawn and transform that into a corn patch. If you truly don't have space for a small block of corn in your garden, it's probably not best for you. Save that space for crops like beans, potatoes, and squash. Beans do something that most vegetables don't. They give you calories, protein, and long-term storage all in one. Pound per pound, dry beans give you about 1,500 calories. That puts them right up there with corn. Green beans are great fresh, but pound for pound, they give you about 150 calories. Dry beans are what sustains you. Dry beans don't take up much room, they improve the soil, and they store for years without having to do much at all. That combination makes them one of the smartest crops that you can grow if your garden had to feed you. Bush beans and pole beans both work very well. It all depends on the use of your space. Bush beans are compact, and they tend to mature all at once, which makes them easy to harvest and dry. Pole beans, once they've been planted, they don't need much beyond a trellis and a little time. Pole beans grow vertical, which is valuable in small space, especially on small homesteads and small gardens. They produce heavily, and once established, they can handle dry conditions surprisingly well. Bush beans and pole beans are just like corn. You let them dry on the plant. Then you shell them, store them, and that's it. Fava beans are another bean that's often overlooked. They have plenty of protein, and they're about 1,500 calories per pound, and they store very well. What makes them different is they thrive in cool weather and can tolerate a frost. They can be planted in the fall or even the winter. They don't need a trellis, they improve the soil, and they add calories and protein to your diet. Winter squash is another crop that I like to grow for storage. It isn't as calorie dense as corn and beans, but I like it because it produces dozens of pounds of food on one vine. Winter squash can store for months, and some varieties up to a year. Some of the better storing varieties are Blue Hubbard, spaghetti, butternut, banana, and kabocha. Winter squash has a trailing vine, and it can take up quite a bit of space, but it doesn't have to. You can grow it up a trellis or on a fence line, allowing space below that so that you can grow other storing crops. Another thing that I like about winter squash is it tolerates our heat here in southern Utah, and it can be fairly drought tolerant. But the key is how you start it out. When you first start it out, of course it needs water to get off and going, but deeper watering is better because those roots are going to go to find that water. So shallow watering will make shallow roots, and deep watering is going to make drought tolerant deep roots. A lot of this information that I'm covering, I'll be going into a greater depth in our homesteading course. And if you're interested in seeing what we're up to, I'll put a link in the description below. Sweet potatoes are a true calorie crop, and they're easy to grow and adapt to most soil types. Pound for pound, sweet potatoes have about 450 calories. That puts them in the same category as other staple root crops. Once sweet potatoes are established, they're surprisingly drought tolerant. They don't panic in the heat either, they produce in it. That's because they have a lot of nice green foliage, and that foliage covers the soil, keeping the moisture in as well as keeping the soil cooler. So they're a great option if you have hot summers or drought conditions. Also, if regular potatoes don't produce well in your area, sweet potatoes surely will. They also grow well in raised beds, in-ground gardens, felt pots, large containers, and they're really nice even in your flower beds, giving you greenery as well as food. The goal with sweet potatoes is the root for storage, but they do give you a bonus. The leaves are also edible. You can eat them like spinach. So this is like a dual crop. You're keeping one for storage and you're eating fresh greens while you're producing those roots. Once potatoes are properly cured, they'll store well into the winter months and even into spring. But the key is to cure them properly. And if you're not sure how to do that, then you can go check this video out here. There's a few crops that I like to grow that don't necessarily feed you on calories, but they make everything else that I store usable. These are tomatoes, onions, and garlic. I grow them for health, flavor, and diversity. When you're cooking from storage crops like dry beans, dry corn, sweet potatoes, and potatoes, you want those 3 extra ingredients so that you can turn those staple crops into meals. Garlic and onions are the base for most cooking. They bring flavor, depth, and aroma to almost every meal. Tomatoes add acidity, a different texture, and keep meals from feeling heavy, which is really important when you're eating from your storage. Garlic is excellent for the immune system, and it can be planted in the fall and grown through the winter. And if you plant an early variety like I do, turban, I usually get that pulled up in May, and that way I can plant another storage crop using that space up wisely. Onions are an antioxidant, and they don't have to take up much room in your garden. They can be planted in and around your storage crops, or even on the edges of your beds. When you plant determinate tomatoes, they don't take up as much room as indeterminate tomatoes, and they're pretty much a sure thing. They produce a lot of tomatoes pretty much all at once, which makes processing easier. You can bottle them or dry them, and they'll store a long time. Garlic, onions, and tomatoes don't carry a lot of calories, but they do add diversity to the kitchen. None of this is about growing everything. It's about intention. Growing what gives back, stores well, and fits into the space that you have. An intentional garden is a garden that feeds your family well. Have a great day, a better tomorrow, and may God bless you. It's about, and I already forgot what I was going to say. Calories per pound. You can run down the road. Shell them, store them. That's frickin' it.